You're listening to Fit Pro Sessions with Parallel Coaching, episode 2 of season 4. Hi, I'm Neil Bergman, and today's podcast, Hayley and I are talking all about cardiovascular disease and what that means for you as a Fit Pro. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a Fit Pro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a Fit Pro? This is the Fit Pro Sessions podcast with Parallel Coaching.
Let's rewind to about 2008.
It's a little while ago.
It was a little while ago, 12 years ago.
Oh God, no.
Oh my God, yeah, completely. So there I was, I'm a PT, personal trainer, in club. It was a pretty quiet Sunday afternoon, and I remember it being particularly cold. I think it was about November, December time, and I'm in Leighton Buzzard, just on the outskirts of Leighton Buzzard in a kind of a premium health club, kind of on that commuter belt to London.
It was very remote there, wasn't it?
It was super remote. I remember the driveway being a good mile long, and I remember driving up the driveway, obviously, to go and do my shift, or my number of clients I had that Sunday afternoon. And I remember the snow was kind of already building up, and I questioned whether or not I'd get home that night, to be honest. The last thing I wanted to be was stuck in this particular health club. It was amazing, but there was something about the building that gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah,
it was a really old building.
Creepy old building.
So anyway, so I did my first couple of clients, and it was I remember it was just after lunch, and I was on the Smith machine in the free weights area, and I got this kind of big heckle and call across the gym floor from the assistant manager. And it was super quiet, and as I kind of ran across, because you could hear the panic, you know, when someone's shouts,
isn't it?
You could sense there was an element of panic in their voice. And as I got closer to the back of a treadmill, there was a gentleman lying on the floor, unconscious, and I got goosebumps now thinking about it. And this, I won't go into all of the details because we don't need to here, but let's cut to the chase here. We had to perform CPR, we had to go into full kind of first aid mode, and we were there for a good 40 minutes before the ambulance could arrive, because in the 3 or 4 hours that I was in club from when I first arrived, the snow had built up and the ambulance really struggled to get up the driveway. Anyway, this poor gentleman did pass away. And it was an incredibly sad day. It would be a sad day for anybody, really, but also obviously for him, for his family. But it was an incredible sad day, and it was the first point for me as a Fit Pro that really, it was a shock. And I think that was a spark for me going down this exercise referral route, because ultimately what happened was here, you know, we got all the information back a couple of days later for the health club of why he passed away in club, but it was high blood pressure. So this person, and when we went back through his PAR-Q, he'd ticked nose all the way down.
Yeah.
So there was no diagnosed problem. There was no referral pathway. However, I mean, maybe he didn't even know he had high blood pressure.
But that's what caused the heart attack.
So ultimately, this person was on the treadmill, elevated his heart rate, and his blood pressure was already elevated due to, it could be a number of conditions.
Number of risk factors.
Yeah, and definitely. There he was.
But he appeared quite as a healthy looking guy. You wouldn't necessarily...
I'd seen him in the club almost every Sunday. I had a regular Sunday afternoon shift with a number of clients. I remember seeing this guy turn up on a regular basis, happy as, you know, you would never know. And I think that's what I like to call, and I've seen this hypertension called the silent killer, because it doesn't show up until you really, know about it.
Yeah, and because it's asymptomatic, that's what that means.
That's completely.
So there's no symptoms necessarily. Okay, at very end levels, like high levels of high blood pressure, people might get like redness in the face, they might get increased headaches. Along those lines, dry mouth comes up as well.
Dizziness, that type of thing, fatigue.
But until that point, you could be going along with a high blood pressure and not even know about it.
Completely.
And the only way to know is to measure it.
Is to measure it. But it comes back to the 3 M's we teach inside our level 2 and level 3 PT courses: measure, manage, and monitor. If I measure something, I can now monitor that on a regular basis, and now take the precautionary management, also known as smart planning, to get a particular result. Now, this is why, it comes back to why I'm so hell bent on pushing the PAR-Q. Yeah. Because that outcome could have been completely a completely different result had a PAR-Q it's been done, but what I mean is done properly.
And I think it's the questioning that goes around that PAR-Q, rather than it's just a form they know to tick all no's, blah, 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 done. Instead of that kind of tick box process, that there's questions that come out about it, but also the extension of that to a consultation that includes the measurements, includes lifestyle questions that flag up some of these risk factors, that he smokes, that he drinks, that he's got a high stress job.
Exactly.
You start stacking up these risk factors that go, actually, we need to take a blood pressure. We take the reading and we notice that actually he does have high blood pressure. We need to send him to the GP so we can start to get that managed, and it all could have been avoided.
Do you know what? I'm going to pause. Do you know what? If you've not guessed already, we're talking about cardiovascular disease, and specifically, we're talking about hypertension, and we are going to talk about hypercholesterolemia as well, which is all about cholesterol in the blood and the body. So that's what today's topic is all about. There we go. We've got 5 minutes in, and there's our intro.
Yeah, but cardiovascular conditions are asymptomatic in the fact that you don't necessarily see them on the outside. It's not like, not to make comparisons, but I will. It's not like, say, obesity, whereby you can see somebody... Well, you can make a comparison because you're comparing something you can't see versus something you can see. With obesity, they walk through the door, you kind of already know there's a risk there. Yeah. Whereas with hypertension and hypercholesterolemia, you don't see it. So you need to measure. Now, something that happened in clubs, you'll be better at remembering the time frame of this than I will, but blood pressure readings started to disappear from the mandatory questioning at the beginning. So I remember when I first started in club, when was the time? Mid-2000s. Every new person, I was on the gym floor as a gym instructor for a good year or so. I loved it. I really earned my stripes, and I learned so much because my gym manager, Phil, and Steve, that's how memorable it was. They'd basically say, right, Neil, you're on a gym floor Saturday, Sunday, every other weekend. You just do one of those days. And every day we're going to send you at least 8 to 10 gym inductions. And I'd be like, do you know what? It's quite repetitive, but I loved it because although everybody had you were beating on your craft, right?
Yeah, completely. Everybody had the same ultimate goal of get a little bit fitter, lose a little bit of weight. Everybody was an individual, and not one person was the same. And I learned so much. And anyway, so we'd sit down for a consultation, and I had to do a blood pressure. It was mandatory. Yeah. And then I remember it was about 2008, 2009, as I moved around to different clubs, the blood pressure readings started to be taken away. And PAR-Qs became kind of almost like just a basic consent form, which was done at point of sale. So the
instructor never saw it anyway.
Yeah, so I could see this trend or this movement happening whereby it was kind of like ignorance is bliss. And I've gone on to do work with Tony Robbins and other mindset coaches and whatnot, and ignorance is not bliss.
No,
it really isn't. So by taking away the PAR-Q from FitPro itself and done at point of sale, it became a really easy barrier to break down to make the sale, to get the membership. And therefore they weren't qualified or trained to do it, so they didn't progress for questions of why
that's the key.
They might have various conditions. I'm going to be really rude, I suppose, and say it was all about the membership, it was all about the money.
You wanted them to pass the PAR-Q so they could join, not the other way around.
And then the blood pressure was taken away because I suppose if the health clubs didn't know there was an issue, they couldn't take responsibility and therefore go through the official route of of sending them to a GP, because that slowed down the whole process of indoctrination into the membership.
Yeah, and getting them
Now,
started.
whether that's fact or opinion, I saw that, and I've spoken to, numbers of PTs and, fit pros in the industry from that era, and they all said very similar things. And it's quite scary.
It doesn't really exist, to my knowledge, in many gyms just as an intro. Usually it would be as part of a PT package. You might do it in your consultation now.
Yeah.
But if somebody hasn't gone to that level of signing up to a PT package specifically, that might never happen. So it kind of gets glossed over. But what you're looking for is to know the classifications of blood pressure readings. And then once you can see those, you then know what is normal. And those that are normal, fit to train.
Well, I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is, should something happen, somebody has to be, will be found liable and responsible for that.
I think regardless of the liability, which is obviously really important, it's the health of your client.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to.
The story at the beginning with the guy on the treadmill, you want the best for your client.
Yeah.
They want the best for themselves. That's why they're coming to the gym, to enhance their health and fitness. We don't want to make things worse. We want to make things better. And that's what it's about.
I think the tough one, let's just stay with, say, hypertension, for example. Let's say we know that a healthy blood pressure, give or take, is roughly 120/80. Okay, and they're going to vary, those readings. It might be 128/75.
Usually the range is, in systolic, 120 to 139. So that systolic is the higher number that you see. And that's because the heart is contracting, which means that there's the greatest amount of pressure.
Which is going to force blood around the system.
And then the second part of the blood pressure for a normal range is 70 to 89.
Which is the distal.
Yeah. Diastole. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Here we go. So me to you, tomatoes.
Is diastole, and that diastole is when the heart's relaxed, so it's the lower number. So you're looking 120 to 140 over 70 to 90.
Completely. And then the various ranges of hypertension go above to stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3. Now, let's say, for example, someone is unaware of their blood pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, they haven't had a blood pressure reading, and they go on into the gym, and let's just give them an arbitrary blood pressure reading of, let's say, 160/85.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not a direct, absolute no, they cannot train, but they're teeter-tottering right on the edge of it.
Yeah.
Okay, because a direct referral would be...
Well, 160 is high.
Yeah, 160 is high.
Yeah, that immediate. So when you've got a number like that, Neil said 160/85, for example, 160 is stage 2.
Yeah.
So that 1 point pushes them right down into the stage 2. So you take the highest number on the category, whereas the 85, they're still in normal.
Still in normal.
So
but
you
what would
go
be an
off the
absolute
higher one.
contraindication? Do not exercise.
180/100.
So there's still not quite at that do not exercise phase.
Yes,
that's my
it.
point.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another story in a minute. I can't remember his name. I'm pretty sure it's Richard. You'll have to remind me of his name. I don't know the story. You don't know the story. We'll come to the story in a minute. Anyway, so let's take this arbitrary number. He walks into the gym and he's 165/85?
160/85.
Cool. And starts walking on a treadmill, absolutely fine. And actually, that's probably the best thing for this person. Now, let's say he jumps up into a jog and then starts moving a bit quicker, maybe puts an incline on. Then his blood pressure is already elevated before he gets going. And an acute effect of exercise is increased blood pressure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Systolic goes up.
Systolic goes up during exercise. Now, the upper limit is already high. So once he starts moving and starts challenging his cardiovascular system, blood pressure is now creeping up, 161, 162, 165, 170, 175. And there comes a point where you're going to feel dizzy, maybe gonna feel that kind of early signs of feeling sick and vomiting.
Headache, pressure, nosebleeds.
Pressure, maybe some cramp or calf discomfort, pain in the back of the neck, that type of thing. And this person's bordering on the line of having a major complication because of his blood pressure.
Yeah.
And that has to be challenged by a fitness professional that knows what they're doing. So go, right, we are going to train hard, we're going to train smart, but what we're not going to do is push your blood pressure up past that 180 marker.
And knowing the things that will push that up. So knowing the contraindicated exercises that push the blood pressure up higher,
Yep.
which is the high intensity work, it's the isometric work, it's the things overhead.
It's the overhead work.
And they do lift the blood pressure further.
And whilst this person might stand there at 160 over 85 and go, actually, I feel fine, I feel fit as a fiddle, I've been at work all day, I've got my kids at home, I feel fine. Actually, what's going on inside is a very different thing going on. Like Hayley said, you can see somebody who walks in with obesity. Somebody knows if they've got low back pain, but somebody could be standing there on a treadmill going, I've had a pretty stressful day, to be honest. I just want to relax and have a run. But actually the impact that could have could be like catastrophic, could be life-threatening.
And here's the thing as well, with that contraindicated exercise, you know, the ones I said that increase the blood pressure more, it's almost like a way of naturally keeping them down to the area they need to be. So they actually will benefit more from a lower intensity, moderate activity, because it will now allow that strengthening of the heart, it will allow the strengthening of all of the blood vessels. It will actually do what is required for them in that moment. It will build their fitness in a way they need. They don't need to sprint right now.
No, completely. So I think, this is why you must have the PAR-Q and a very clear, I'm going to say double consultation method, which is what we teach in our PT course in Fit Pro 31. Because inside that double consultation, you've got very, really simple, 2 sessions with them to extract information. They might have like this idea that they want to go on and do, I don't know, most of our training's in Milton Keynes. So they might go, right, I'm going to do the Milton Keynes half marathon.
Yeah.
That's not to say they can't do the Milton Keynes half marathon, but if they then sit down and go, a couple of years ago I did a 1 hour 45 half, I'd like to be able to match that. You're kind of thinking, hold on a minute, your blood pressure is over here. You've got a health related goal, and yet you're focused on a performance-related goal. And there needs to be some compromise, certainly in the early stages of training, to go from health-related to smart performance-related.
Yes.
Because if I go straight to performance-related, I could be doing more harm than good. And you go, well,
it's not something to train through.
You can't train through that. You can't see it. You can't feel it until it's bam, too late.
Just like the story.
So anyway, go back to the next story. So I'm pretty sure the guy was Richard.
I want to know who this is.
Hayley used to work in a retirement village. Yeah, you can see the excitement. It was like, there was so many clients. I think at one point Hayley had almost 300 clients on her books. And anyway, so one of her clients was a direct referral, a private referral. And I'm pretty sure his name was Richard. Anyway, we went out from Milton Keynes, where we lived, to just outside Stony Stratford. And we went to his house. Do you remember? Yeah? And we walked in, and his family were there as well. And they had said,
this was bad.
And it was completely. And it was his family, his son, that had done the referral for him. And I remember him being really open in this first consultation, he was a little bit reluctant. He wasn't quite, I'm going to say, fully committed. He wasn't really ready, but he knew something was up. Anyway, so we did the first blood pressure reading. I remember it was after about 35-40 minutes, because there was an element of white coat syndrome, whereby you could tell he was getting, I'm going to say, stressed and blood pressure going up purely from the anticipation of doing the test.
Yeah.
Anyway, the first test came out and it was 196 over 110.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And me and Hayley kind of looked at each other like, oh my God, we have never seen this before. And I'm pretty good.
He classed himself as okay in terms of activity, like he'd go out and walk the dog.
Yeah, completely.
It's fine.
We had poker face that day. I remember. But we had a poker face. We weren't like that, so I don't think they could tell our reaction.
Inside, I was like that.
We were like,
God.
we had this telepathic communication of like,
It's the type
oh
thing
my God.
where you take the back off the blood pressure monitor and wiggle the batteries around and hope that there's a problem with the
So anyway,
blood pressure monitor.
we left it about a good 5 to 6 minutes, and we did it again. And the next reading came out at something like 205 over 115. Anyway, I made the decision. I said, I don't want to leave here without you getting or seeking some medical attention. because that was a incredibly consistent high. We did it the third time and it came out very similar, if not higher again. Anyway, we did call for a paramedic. They came out and they said it was the best course of action
Nice.
to do in that moment, just to be on the safe side. Now, just suppose we had have not taken that and taken his word for, I walk the dog, I go for a cycle, my diet's okay. We could have gone in the gym and it could have been a whole different story. Okay, so let's cut to the back end of his story. Richard ended up on a number of medications, and within, I think it was about 4 weeks, he was down at Haley's gym doing modified exercise and joining in.
Able to train because we'd brought down his risk factor to the point that he's now in a normal level of blood pressure.
Yeah.
However, we still have to apply the contraindications. You can't just go, oh, cool, now that you're on medication, we can treat it as normal.
Yes.
And that's why it's so crucial that if you've not got the knowledge of blood pressure and hypertension from, say, something like Exos referral, then you're not going to be, as a qualification, I should say, then you're not going to be able to know what you can and can't do. So it's not a case of, oh, the GP's given him a ticket and a stamp, he's good to go.
He's good to go and train.
Anyone can train him.
Now
he still needs that.
There's a double whammy here, because let's say, for example, you have a client and their blood pressure is, let's just say 145/85. They're just above, they're like stage 1 hypertensive.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, they're not going to be, I'm not a GP obviously, but the likelihood of going on a medication's much lower compared to, say, the story I just said about Richard.
Yeah.
So modifiable changes to someone's diet, to someone's alcohol intake, to someone's smoking, activity, stress, is going to radically change that across a period of 8 to 12 weeks. Okay, so that would be the preferred option. Now let's go back to Richard, who ended up on I think it was a beta blocker, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
now a Ramapil pill.
Ramapil.
A Ramapil pill. So he comes in after 4 weeks. Really, the new blood pressure we're seeing now, or the reduced blood pressure that allows us to train, is not an effect of a modification to lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a modification to something being added to the body, which is an external stimulus of the beta blocker, the pill.
Yeah.
And so now I've really got to, as a referral instructor, to truly understand the impact of that pill, that medication, on blood pressure during exercise.
And heart rate.
Yeah. Because effectively I'm getting, dare I say, again, this is a very crude approach, a fake score.
Absolutely. Well, a beta blocker in itself will lower the resting heart rate by about 30 beats per minute, roughly. It would depend on each person.
I mean, everyone's an individual.
So it's already massively disguising what's really going on.
What's happening.
So you can't necessarily take that same stats in terms of heart rate as a monitoring in the same way.
Now, I'm going to go kind of on a bit of a tangent, and I'm going to do this again later when we talk about hypercholesterolemia, because when somebody, let's say they've got a blood pressure, they're hypertensive stage 1, and they've got 145/85, okay? They are going to take a much more holistic approach. They're going to challenge their food, challenge their mindset, challenge their activity, their NEAT as well, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, ideally hit their 10,000 steps, okay? Now, they're going to go on, and the cascade effect is actually they're going to develop really nice healthy habits that impact their whole body, the anatomical and physiological systems for life.
Cascades onto the rest of their body and conditions.
Through a clear A&P pathway.
Yeah.
Now then, go back to the Richard, the dude that's got really high blood pressure and is now on a beta blocker. Beta blockers have evidence that can cause weight gain.
Yeah, it also links in with diabetes and sensitivity with insulin.
So that has although one medication improves one condition, it can be the start and catalyst of other conditions. Okay, so now you've got a anatomical and physiological pathway.
So it looks better in the short term.
But the impact,
and takes the initial risk out
completely.
In terms of it being high, but there is impact from long-term use.
They're called comorbidities. Yeah. So they are conditions brought on because of the primary condition.
Yeah, secondary conditions.
Completely.
Do you want to hear something really scary?
Well, I think we've had a couple of scary things already. I don't know if it can get any scarier.
About a quarter of all
okay.
English adults are diagnosed with
Is that England or UK?
England.
England, okay.
That's why I said English.
English.
England adults.
England adults. It sounds very weird, doesn't
A
it?
quarter of England. A quarter of
The
England.
Wales ladies.
12.5
The
million.
Scotland men.
12.5 million people are diagnosed with hypertension. So that's being above 140
So
over 90.
are we saying for a quarter of English people, England, a quarter of England? Cool, that's a scary
But
stat.
do you want to know the even scarier?
Go for it.
They reckon there's another 4 million on top of that 12.5 million that don't even know they have it. And that it is untreated, no idea they have it, not
And
diagnosed,
that's where
not
you
treated.
come in, and I come in as a fit pro, because ultimately someone's going to come in for a performance related goal, couch to 5k, they want to shed some timber, lose some weight, whatever it might be. But in the grand scheme of things, the likelihood is for 1 in 4, maybe potentially a half of your people come in a hypertensive state.
And
Now,
even if it's not diagnosed, they might still have it.
yes, exactly. So it's your responsibility to take a blood pressure.
And that's that screening,
And
isn't
that's
it?
that screening or the double consultation. So I see the blood pressure as a static objective test.
Yeah.
Okay, so it gives me a very clear number, a fact number. And if I did Hayley's blood pressure today, that's what it is right now. That's a status check. Now,
A bit like an MOT. It's
a bit-
like valid right now.
valid right now, but the moment you take an MOT on a car and you drive it off the forecourt and out the garage, it's almost invalid, because your headlight could go straight away. You could go over a pothole and there could be a crack in your windscreen. Now, the moment Hayley goes downstairs and eats something or has a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, her blood pressure will change. So it's not just a score, a fact number. I can then go into some subjective testing and questionnaires to truly ascertain why is Hayley's blood pressure what it is right now.
Yeah, nice.
Because that can now highlight what's going on at home, at work, with their food, with their sleep, with their alcohol, with their smoking, recreational drugs, illegal drugs, a whole host of things that are causing stressors on the body that elevate blood pressure over time.
Yeah, it comes from that extracting that information in their consultation.
So I've got the subjective of the questionnaires and the objective tests that I can then measure, manage and monitor. And I think this links really nicely to a next cardiovascular condition, which is hypercholesterolemia.
And I'm going to stay with my stats
Go for
because they get worse.
Well, you're a jolly old soul this morning, aren't you?
Feeling really jolly. So they reckon
They, who are the people?
so it's through NHS statistics,
Yep.
basically, but that 40% approximately, just under, are either borderline or have high cholesterol levels.
So when we're talking about hypercholesterolemia, hyper meaning high, and then we're talking about cholesterol in the blood. So we're talking about I'm going to say the good and the bad stuff, the HDLs and the LDLs, but in a minute I'm going to completely take away that myth that LDLs aren't bad. There's no good or bad cholesterol. It's just, I suppose, it's an easy way of talking about them, but it's something that's become kind of mainstream media.
Yes.
So we've got
Still
high cholesterol in the blood, hypercholesterolemia.
Yes.
Okay.
So about 40% will have a diagnosed high or borderline high cholesterol.
So-
however,
Yeah.
it's anticipated another 20% could have it undiagnosed. This is now literally taking up the entirety of our population
Completely.
between these two conditions.
Between these two conditions. And I think this is and I want to say this is another silent killer, because you don't know you have this unless you have a blood test. So you would go to your GP, you would do a blood test, then it would come back give you a very clear objective number of where your cholesterol in the blood is.
And it's classed as high if it's above 5 millimoles per litre.
Cool.
And that's for total cholesterol. There's also other little breakdowns about making sure the LDL's within a certain
Some
level.
range, completely.
But you learn more about that in detail.
Completely. So anything above 5, you're kind of going. So we're saying that 40% are bordering like 4.8, 4.95, 5.1, and then
Yeah.
and then another 20%
Oh no, 40% are either borderline or above.
Okay.
And then there's about another 20% that are undiagnosed, they reckon.
Wicked. So somebody could come in of any shape or size, male or female, any religion, doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. You could appear to be an incredibly fit athlete and still have hypercholesterolemia.
Quite often the difference with hypercholesterolemia and blood pressure is that hypercholesterolemia often has a hereditary line. So
Cool,
you
it's just what I was
could
about to
be
say.
super fit and healthy, like you say, even an athlete.
Well, we used to
and
work with
still have
somebody, a
it.
guy called Andrew, do you remember? And his blood cholesterol, bear with me a minute, you might be able to call me back on this. I'm pretty sure it was in the high 20s. Do you remember the when we first left uni? Andrew, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, maybe.
And he didn't appear to be overweight. I mean, he was overweight, but he wasn't obese. Do you remember the bald-headed guy? Yeah, and I'm pretty sure his cholesterol was in the high 20s. And he had to have a pretty strict medication routine to bring that down.
Yeah.
And that was a hereditary line.
Yeah, just that he's creating a higher level of cholesterol and has a higher level of cholesterol naturally in his body.
Cool.
But that still comes with problems. Now, shall we...
Where are we going with this?
I'm
We do have a
going-
plan.
I'm going, what is the good and bads?
Well, let's go with what
And
is
then you can
what is.
delift the good and
Let's go
bads.
with cholesterol first. What is cholesterol?
Cholesterol is a mixture of lipids, so the fats, and proteins. And these, basically, the way that cholesterol work in our body is that we need cholesterol.
In every cell of the
Everything.
body.
It builds the outside membrane of our cells. It builds some of the main structure of our cells. It builds our hormones, our enzymes. We need it.
We need it. And I think, you need to go back to your level 2 and your level 3 A&P and really understand about enzymes and hormones and understand how important cholesterol is to the production of those structures, of those things, because nothing can happen in the body without cholesterol. So there needs to be this homeostasis, this nice balance. So homeostasis means balance within the body. There needs to be the right amount of HDL and the right amount of LDL.
Yes, and these are high density lipoproteins and low density lipoproteins.
Proteins.
Now, it's always said that high density are the good ones, and I always remember these by like high H, it's happy cholesterol.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. And the LDLs are the low ones, so they're the ones that are bad in inverted commas.
Completely. However, they're not bad because it's actually the low density lipoproteins that are the main functioning cholesterols that build all of the good stuff for our body.
The LDL's job is the bad ones.
The bad ones.
Is to take cholesterol that we need to our cells so that we can use it for hormones, enzymes, cell membrane, cell structure. So that's got that job. It needs to be there.
It's so fundamental. So,
But the problem with that is because it's carrying this cholesterol, it can end up leaving bits around the arteries, essentially. That's very crude terms. But it ends up building up around the arteries and then plaques.
so there's a build-up of calcium, there's a build-up of plaque, and then these increased LDLs attach onto this for a better word, scarring, and builds up over time.
Yeah.
Okay, which is known as atherosclerosis.
Now, the thing, exactly. Now, the thing
Cool,
that
we're going to that. You don't need to be able to pronounce all these words.
No. But the thing with that is that can then narrow the arteries.
Yes.
And then if you imagine a river flowing downstream, if you've got a blockage in that river, like some trees falling down, suddenly the pressure going through it increases, and that's
Because
the
more
same thing.
water has to get through a smaller space. And that's exactly the same with your arteries.
Exactly.
So the build-up of... so if you imagine these LDLs, they're going downstream with the flow of blood. They're going to cause blockages in the most narrowest of places because the LDLs will naturally flow downstream until they can't go downstream any further. So they wouldn't block on the wider parts of the artery, the river, because they can
trees
easily
always block up at the bridges, don't they?
completely. And so that's likely to be down in the peripheral to start off with. That could be, well, it could be in your heart, coronary artery disease, which would go into a heart attack. Okay.
And peripheral arterial disease, which affects the femoral artery and the capillaries down the bottom.
So you might get some cramps or some numbness or coldness or tingling in the calves or below.
Yeah.
And they're clear symptoms that something is going on.
And often it is attributed to a high level of LDLs in the body.
Yes.
However, we also need HDLs, and their job essentially is to go around and clean it all up.
Yeah.
But so it's about the ratio between them.
Completely.
So if you have way too many LDLs and not enough HDLs, then you've got more debris than you have things being cleaned up.
Completely.
Or the idea of medication and of leading a healthy life is to balance that ratio.
And I think, if you look at, say, youngsters, okay, that are apparently healthy, fit individuals, they've got a nice natural homeostasis balance between HDLs and LDLs.
Yep.
Okay.
Enough LDLs to go and create the cells and the enzymes
and hormones and the production of the body, and enough HDLs to
keep the arteries clean.
and to have that nice balance between the two. And so what happens as we get older, as we go through life, is we develop bad habits with our food. We develop bad habits with alcohol, with smoking, with I'm going to say just an unhealthy relationship with a lot of things that go in the body, or not exercising.
Because actually exercise helps increase your amount of HDLs.
Completely.
Which is a fantastic. So if you don't do much activity, then you're not going to have as much natural boost.
I'm just going to there's quite a lot of research around this, but let's just give it a really crude overview. Let's go back to, say, the 1950s, when the majority of jobs were, certainly for a younger population, were very active. Okay, were movement, where their daily amount of steps was already high based on their job.
More industrial.
Much more industrial.
Yeah.
And so, because they were more active, we could say, well, they've probably got more.
Even down to commuting would be more
completely.
active.
They've got more HDLs. Now, the diet, going back to, say, the 50s and 60s, okay, not as many people were drinking, reported, okay. Food source and types of food going in were very different to today. Now, let's fast forward, let's say 50 years to 2010 to 2020, okay. We're seeing people move tiny amounts. Average office workers are good if they hit 3,000 steps per day.
A lot more sedentary.
And youngsters are walking to school with cans of Monster and Red Bull and Jaffa Cakes in their hands. And so we're seeing hypercholesterolemia back in the 40s, 50s and 60s be an age onset, because it was a lifestyle disease over the stressors over a number of years.
Yeah.
Whereas now you're seeing the lifestyle kick in youngsters, and you're seeing youngsters with hypercholesterolemia, which is insane.
Yeah.
And teenagers and young adults, which I just find, it just baffles me.
Yeah.
So the number one thing
Which
that's
means
causing
the risk goes up,
the risk
right?
goes up. Well, number one thing that's causing hypercholesterolemia is our unhealthy relationship with living. Either the foods and things we're consuming and activity.
And stress levels.
And stress levels. So the one thing that is going to truly turn the tide on this and put the brakes on this runaway condition, on this train, is healthy habits, modifiable changes, and challenging someone's lifestyle through it's a behaviour change.
Absolutely.
This is a behavioural change issue.
Yeah, and it's not about taking a pill and carrying on with the life you have.
No, because if somebody does have high cholesterol, the likelihood is they'd be on a statin.
Yeah.
Now, there's other medications they could.
But usually a statin is one of the first ones
And
that
in
comes
the
up.
exercise referral, you go into exactly what a statin is. But
And the
for
different types of statins.
for this or the purposes of a podcast, see it as a pill that we take that helps block the development of LDLs.
And reduces the number of them. Yeah.
Okay, which has a cascade effect, because first and foremost, you don't necessarily want the body to completely eradicate and lower LDLs, because LDLs are fundamental to the production of the body and life of the body as we know
Building
it.
of our cells, again, the hormones, understanding what's going on in our digestion system.
Completely. And that's the knock-on effect, because statins are also linked to develop. Get my words out. I'm just getting really excited now. So passionate about it. But
Development?
Statins go on to the I can't get the words out. The development.
We're not cutting that out.
I'm not going to cut it out, I promise you. statins go on to the development of other conditions
BBC voice out.
completely, of such as type 2 diabetes, stroke, angina, obesity,
disease.
cardiovascular disease, and so forth. And we know if somebody goes on and develops obesity and type 2 diabetes goes up, their likelihood of stroke goes up, their likelihood of mental health goes up, their likelihood of mechanical low back pain goes up. Before you know it,
It's just this interconnected web of all the conditions.
completely.
And that's why you may have noticed, I've certainly noticed, that when somebody suddenly has a lifestyle change, let's say they retire, for example, from an active job, you start seeing things escalate quickly in terms of the amount of common clinical conditions, side effects they have from medication, symptoms about their condition, worsening, more pains, more aches, and it starts to increase.
I think it's like the snowball rolling downhill. And, if we go back 30, 40, 50 years, the snowball rolled down the hill across someone's lifetime. And it didn't speed up until maybe they're 65, 70 years old.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing youngsters roll up the snowball very, very quickly. And by the time they're in their teens, this snowball is running downhill incredibly fast, building up and up and up and up and up, which leads to this cascade effect of, okay, yes, I just had a can of Red Bull on the way to school. I'm going to paint a bad picture now. And then it led into Jaffa Cakes. And then I didn't walk to school. I got the bus to school. And then I just sat down and I was on the expo. Then I got out of PE. And then I was deconditioned. Now I've got hypercholesterolemia. Then I went on to this statin. Now I'm overweight and obese. Now my low back hurts. Now I'm not comfortable with myself. I've got knee pain. Now I'm not exercising. Now I've got low back pain.
Diabetes.
Now it leads on to
stress, anxiety, depression.
Yeah. Ooh.
And that's
not always the case. Don't get me wrong.
But you can stop the snowball effect earlier.
That's what we want to. That's the message here.
That's the thing. So as Fit Pros, you are health and fitness professionals, and health is about the prevention of diseases.
When did we drop the health and fitness?
We said this in the last episode.
I'm going to say it in
Why
every one of these episodes because we're all after it's fitness. That's what I see so much on social media. But actually, health is you can't go on and do fitness if you're not healthy. Simple. And health isn't just your ability to do a couch to 5k. It's not depicted by your ability to run a 10k. Health is your entire world as we know it. Your 24 hours being optimal, being pain free, being relaxed, being happy, and being you in your skin.
And not having to succumb to so many clinical conditions and diseases.
Yeah, and not being able to not demonizing food or demonizing exercise or just having homeostasis of life. That's what health is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's our role as health and fitness professionals, is to go out there and encourage people to lead healthy lives and stop that snowball effect from occurring. And today we've talked about hypercholesterolemia and hypertension in massive detail, really.
Yeah.
Good amount of detail. There's still loads more you could learn.
Well, I'm going to say
we do dive in.
I reckon we've only hit like 1 or 2% of the topic. Like we've jumped into some like key stats. We talked about objective, subjective testing, but really we've skimmed the surface here. And that's what these Fit Pro sessions are there for. What they're not here for is to go, well, I listened to Neil and Hayley from Parallel Coaching and Fit Pro sessions, therefore I now know what I'm doing. That's not the case. That really isn't. And I really hope you got this far through episode 2 to get that very clear message.
Yeah.
These sessions aren't there to say you now know what to do. They're here to hopefully set a spark. Go back to season 2. It's all about start with the end in mind and setting that spark to become an inferno of like, why me? Why now? Who do I want to work with? Who's my ideal client? How am I going to go and help people? What impact, legacy am I going to leave?
Yeah.
Now, I genuinely believe part of my why and my legacy is to have an impact on health. Because if we leave it, and this sounds maybe a little bit negative, but if we leave this up to the NHS and we leave this up to pharmaceutical, big pharma, and we leave this up to a government level, and we leave this to local authority, don't get me wrong, some of them do a great job at tackling. But I'm on the trenches. I'm actually working with clients that have these conditions. I can have an impact in someone's world, which means that impacts I work mainly with guys, so I impact their partner. I impact their kids. I impact that household.
Yeah.
And their kid could have a conversation with another kid at school, and I could indirectly have that ripple effect, the knock-on effect.
They have a conversation with somebody
So
at work.
I feel
and it
like
carries
part
on.
of my legacy, my why, is to impact in the micro, because I only need to impact one person to impact lots of people.
Amazing.
And that's what I love about, and I genuinely believe without us, you, me, I, Hayley, okay, in the trenches, then we're not going to put the brakes on this runaway train. Certainly the two conditions we've talked about today, these silent killers, because somebody might not know they've got hypertension or hypercholesterolemia. I could be the first person to beat the drum and, educate them via my social media or directly face to face
you could
or
change
apart.
their life
You could
entirely.
change their life, and
The trajectory of where it may go
I
from that point.
goosebumpily never thought that would be the case when I started out in fitness.
No, I just thought it was something I liked.
Yeah, completely. But the amount of people I've helped, guided, mentored, referred back to a GP, and their medications have come down, or they've come off medication entirely, or their nurse they've gone back
As
to
a result of getting
as a
healthier and
result
fitter.
of getting healthier, fitter, stronger, leaner, and so forth. And they've gone on to really challenge their behaviour and their approach to life and their habits. And for me,
It's liberating,
it's
right?
liberating. My job's done. Do you know what I mean? And that's what hopefully we're inspiring you and motivating you and just giving you another option. Because I think so many people get into fitness thinking they're going to train people to lift heavy weights, which I suppose we're still doing, to get their first pull-up, to do their 10K, to drop some weight. But actually, let's go back and just put that 5-letter word, just double check, HEALTH, 6 letters. That 6-letter word at the beginning, and let's go. I work in the health and fitness industry. There we go. There's my little spiel.
Nice wrap.
Nice wrap up. I want to know what you've learned today.
So do I.
Okay, so you could email us, info@parallelcoaching.com.
Oh, you got it right.
Okay, I did. Okay, or if you're listening...
We'll put a link with this on the show notes as well, so you can message us directly.
You could message us directly to our Facebook page. You could drop a comment below this on YouTube and any other social app platform you're listening in. If there's a space to drop any feedback, then please do. I've loved this one. Okay,
I love it.
I do like these two conditions because they come through an awful lot with clients.
Yeah, and now with all this education you've just had, the conversation you can now have with a client to leverage that behaviour change has just radically changed.
But it only comes from that double consultation and drilling into that PAR-Q and using the PAR-Q as a screening tool to fully establish what's going on and who's who in the zoo.
Exactly.
Boom. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
So we will see you next
week.
week, bright and breezy, a week today for
Dive
episode
into a few
number
more conditions,
3.
shall we?
And we're going to jump into a few more conditions. Until then, we will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a fit pro doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a fit pro? This is the Fit Pro Sessions podcast with Parallel Coaching.